Three things I wish I knew in my 20s. The first one is don't settle for attraction. Attraction is not love. It's not coming from a whole place where you realize that you have your whole potential and your whole worth. It's actually coming from a place where you're seeking for something that you don't feel like you have. And this leads to very disempowering relationships that usually end up in heartbreak. I have often found myself attracted to partners, and in that ended up in a place where I was alone, feeling alone, all by myself, and now raising babies alone. And there's no give and take because you've already stepped into this relationship very disempowered. And when you lead your life from a place of being disempowered, then you're going to attract people who are not going to see your value and your worth, and they're going to degrade you. And so when you're seeking attraction, this is a sign that you're living from a place of lack and fear and low confidence and low self esteem. It really took me doing a lot of shadow work to understand that I wasn't broken and I didn't need what I was attracted to in other people. I just needed to see for myself that I was everything I thought I was missing. I was just believing a lot of lies about myself, which ended up for me being in relationships that were trauma bonds, being really hurt and disappointed by people who didn't really want to show up for me, who didn't love me, and wouldn't stay in a committed way with me in my life. And when you base your relationship on attraction, then that has no longevity and doesn't build the trust and the security and the commitment that is absolutely needed to raise your babies. It's like instant gratification. And raising babies takes way more than instant gratification. It takes a deep commitment to love. And if you're in a partner relationship that is based on just gratification, then there's no longevity there to support each other in the trenches of parenthood. And then you end up alone, and it's really hard on yourself, on your kids, and on both partners who now have to spend time getting to know themselves all over again, trying not to repeat the same mistakes that led you into that relationship. And you got to look at your kids and see the life that they have, that, they wanted a family, they wanted that committed love that lasts. And of course, like, I wanted to model that long haul committed love to my children as well. But because I settled for attraction, I I'm now facing my children, and now I'm needing to redefine love for myself in my life. And I've got a model for my children what that healing looks like after you've settled for attraction love. And now, face myself in that and face them and all of their emotions and their frustrations on top of mine. So it's a journey of, really, when you're coming into someone that you're attracted to, try to see if there's something in them that you're attracted to because you don't believe you have for yourself. And then I would definitely say run and go find a way to fill up what you're not seeing in yourself, so that you're not continuing to be needing a partner to fill that space for you. Because what will end up happening is you'll just end up so empty and so depleted and so hurt. And the thing is once you get to see that, once you start to heal with these parts of yourself that don't feel worthy, that are needing this energy, that are having this attraction, you'll start to see that what you were looking for was actually in you all the time. And you just didn't see it because of a lot of lies and woundings and conditioning that we have experienced, that we have taken on viscerally and believed about ourselves and became our identity. And it wasn't true. So, number two, I'm just going to look at my notes, is oh, yes, this is a big one for me. Spend less time trying to figure out everybody else and spend more time trying to figure out who you are. So, when I was younger, I remember being in the kitchen with my grandma one day, and she was showing me how to cook, and she was telling me about the importance of not wasting anything. And she was talking to me about how she could stretch so much dollars in groceries and create a meal just by saving and scrimping. And that's how her and her family got through tough financial times. But it stemmed from her experiencing being a young child with her mother and father going through the depression after the war. And that's where she learned to scrimp and save, and that created safety for her in that depression, was finding out how they could be resourceful and, not wasting anything. But as she was having this conversation with me in the kitchen, inside of me, like anger was flaring up. Because for one, I didn't like the way she was talking to me. And it didn't really make sense to me because, well, for one, I didn't really want to have to go through all those lengths and extra precautions and trying to make things stretch. It just didn't really make sense to me because we weren't in the depression anymore. And so why was she still living and acting based on scarcity that wasn't even happening in her current life? And but I loved my grandma, and she invested a lot of time into trying to teach me and play with me and invest in me. She was one of the only people in my life that actually really stood in and tried to be present for me and love me. So I respected her, but I also I didn't want to get yelled at by her. I didn't want her scoldings, basically. So I didn't say anything to her. But what happened in that moment was I felt diminished. I felt like ashamed, like maybe I shouldn't question her. And I thought that maybe she knew something that I didn't, and that maybe I should live in fear, like that this could happen again. So maybe I should be taking on this more frivolous scarcity mindset because of what if. And so I started to ignore that part of me that questioned, like, why should why should we live like we're in the depression if we're not? And I just ignored that because I was afraid of getting in trouble. And so what happened is throughout my life, I would look at other people and I would look at their traits, and I would just try to figure out who I was through taking on other people's good traits and trying to learn from everybody else. But in that, I totally stopped learning who I was. I paid no attention to what was truthful or right for me because I just kind of thought everybody else and what they were doing was better than anything I could think of, and that I was wrong. And I didn't want to be punished, and I didn't want to feel the shame of having my own insights and my own opinions. And so I was forming my identity and my character out of everything that had been modeled to me by other people that I thought was okay. But I had no idea who I was. And I was ashamed to be who I was and to live how I wanted to live. And so part of my healing journey has been to actually just take a look at who I truly am, how I truly want to live. And this has lifted so much anxiety for me because I've learned to sit with the part of me that really didn't want to disappoint my grandmother and understand that that was her scarcity and I didn't need to take that on for myself and that I wanted to live in a world of abundance, that that was okay. And so the third one, and this is kind of similar to the one that we just talked about, but this one, I'm just going to look at my notes, is think for yourself. Everyone is speaking from their own perspective. And so you might want to actually develop your own. But here's the thing, if everyone is thinking from their own perspective, they're thinking from what they got taught to and modeled to them from other people. They're thinking about life and their perspective through their woundings, through their trauma, through whatever shame or pain or scoldings, grandmas that they're trying to avoid. And so, one way that this actually also took on in my life was through my religion. I got a lot of spiritual shaming and biblical trauma and fear put on me. So one person that I modeled my faith after and my religion after was my father, who used a lot of fear over me to believe scripture and the Bible the way he understood it from his perspective. And this actually made me hate his God that he served. I never wanted anything to do with him because I saw the God as the father that I experienced in my biological life. And that father was abusive and neglectful and not there for me emotionally. And although he tried in his own healing process as best as he could to his own consciousness, he tried, but my relationship with my father ended up making me feel like this God that he served would be unsafe and not secure and couldn't possibly ever love me. And so I've had to go through and understand that my understanding of my faith, it's okay and it's safe for me to have, even though it's separate from my father's. And that has been one of the most scariest things for me, to come into my own identity and understanding of what spirituality and my relationship to God, source, universe, whatever it is, what that looks like for me, and to let go of the fear of, you know, basically the fear of the conditioning of if I'm not a certain way, then I'm basically going to go to hell, and not let that be a driving force for me to take on somebody else's perspective around their religion and around their beliefs, and take out some of the fear as well, because of course I loved my father and I didn't want to do anything wrong in his eyes, but he continued to also hurt me, and the way that his perception was very limited based on the traumas and woundings that he experienced from his own father and his own mother, and that was all projected onto me. So it's been really important for me to determine what I believe based on my own consciousness and based on my healing of my trauma and my wounds. So, finally, I would just like to leave you with this, that you don't have to work so hard for love. In fact, if you are working for love, it's not love. If you are in your life and you're doing everything for everybody else and you're busy running around, um, doing a lot of caretaking, that's not love. Um, but there's another outlet to it too, is that, um, let me just think for a minute. When we're trying to be good enough for love, we're trying to meet everybody else's standards, and we're trying to conform to what everybody else wants us to do to keep the peace for them to feel safe and for them to feel better. But what happens internally is that there's chaos brewing inside and that you don't feel safe because you've taken on many different hats of trying to do everything else for everybody else to feel safe. And this just causes pain in your soul because it's like you can't be safe and you can't be loved unless you're good enough for everybody else. But inside, you can't feel love. There's nothing, you could not make everybody else feel safe and happy and follow everybody else's ways, like without completely losing and diminishing your own light. And true safety and love is something from the inside, coming from a place that we've experienced for ourselves. Love isn't something that can be found outside of you. It's something that's observed naturally inside of you for just who you are. You are worthy of love as you are, who you are in this frame, who you were created to be, who you were born as, and who you are in this moment. And there's just not, and you don't have to work for love. You don't have to perform for love. That's an absolute lie. And I want you to stand in the love of who you are already and trust that that is enough. And anybody that you have to work for to get their approval, to get their love, they don't love you. And they can't because they don't love themselves. So I just wanted to say thank you for taking time, and I hope this helped. And I will talk to you soon.